Thank you, dear colleague, for that not only warm embrace, but for all the great leadership that you continue every day to share with this amazing congregation. Now, I love all 900 congregations, do not get me wrong. But there will always only be just one that's home, and that's this congregation. So for the last 70 years, this Kehillah Kadoshah, this holy congregation, has been a pillar of strength, of goodness, of learning, as well as a continuous shelter from the storms. This is what moves us all to be together. And looking around, there are a lot of us who feel that we needed to be here tonight to celebrate how much this remarkable congregation means to each of us. I was the rabbinic intern at WRT when it was turning 30. I was the senior rabbi when we celebrated our 40th. And I am beyond honored to be here tonight with all of you to celebrate as we reach 70. WRT has now fortified literally generations of our members, connecting us to each other, to our global Jewish people, to Torah, and to the Holy One of blessing. Now, in our Jewish tradition, 70 has a profound meaning. In Torah, there were 70 elders who partnered with Moses. We think Moses did the whole thing himself? Not a chance. He had to have those amazing lay leaders with which he would gain not only strength but wisdom and direction. And so too at WRT, we have an unbelievably inspiring assembly of leaders who have partnered with all of our clergy in shaping and, yes, reshaping this inspiring spiritual community. And our ancient sages taught that there are shivim panim baTorah. There are 70 faces of Torah, at least 70 different ways to understand any single text from our tradition. That dynamism and diversity have been hallmarks of the way WRT has tackled the many challenges of contemporary Jewish life. Like Rabbi Angela, I just returned recently from Israel, where I went to bring the love of our entire Reform movement as we stand shoulder to shoulder with our Israeli siblings. The grief and trauma are deep and evident in every single conversation and in every embrace. I paid a Shiva visit to the widow of my close friend Ofer Lipstein, who was the head of all of the Jewish communities right along the Gaza border. He was one of the very first to be slaughtered as he confronted swarms of Hamas terrorists coming into Kfar Aza on October the 7th. We prayed that Ofer's missing son, Nitzan, was a hostage. Can you imagine that we were praying that he was a hostage? But alas, he was found among the carnage and eventually identified as yet another of the 1,400 butchered on October 7th. Walking into their house of mourning and embracing Ofer's wife, Vered, I felt as if I had entered the biblical Job's home. And the reality was that that wasn't the only family sitting in excruciating Shiva. They were taking place all over and still are. Some of you may remember that when we were laying the foundation for this exquisite sanctuary, and can I just say, this is an exquisite sanctuary. Rabbi Angela, I know yours is pretty nice too. Just saying, that was not a comparison. There can be multiple gorgeous sanctuaries, but there's something in this sanctuary, and I have to tell you, the detail that I'm about to share may not be fresh in everyone's mind. But when we were laying the foundation of this building, this incredible sanctuary, we placed some earth from Israel right under the ark. And it wasn't just a random handful of earth from the Holy Land. The earth was given to us by Rabbi Maya Leibovich, who was then the rabbi of Kamatz, a Reformed congregation just outside of Jerusalem and one of WRT's sister congregations. And those bonds, they not only exist, they grow stronger every day. The current rabbi of Kamatz, Rabbi Alona Nir Karen, and I paid a condolence call to the family of Majid Ibrahim, a 19-year-old Muslim from Abu Ghosh, just down the way from Mevaseret Zion. One of the over 8,000 rockets fired by Hamas at Israel hit and killed Majid. Thousands, I literally mean thousands of Israelis, Jews and Muslims, came to comfort his aching family. Majid's family are also citizens of Israel. They have found important ways to live peacefully with their Jewish neighbors. I also sat with families of the hostages being held in Gaza, and they pleaded. One mother, Natasha Ben Tzvi, grabbed my arm and she said, "You have to do everything possible to make sure they go free." I can still feel that grip, and I promised on behalf of our Reform movement's almost 2 million people that we would do our part. I met with President Isaac Herzog, with whom I have known and worked closely for the past decade. He had to adjust the timing of our meeting because of his meeting with President Emmanuel Macron, as if the president of the URJ could just be moved around at will. I told President Herzog how virtually every single one of our Reformed congregations held vigils with not only their members, but with all those in their communities in the aftermath of October the 7th, and how now we are all actively contributing funds and activism to bolster Israel at this critical time. He and others implored me to make sure our movement continued to stand with Israel when the war against Hamas and the inevitable growing number of civilian casualties would cause Americans to turn their sympathy into antipathy. On your behalf, I answered again that we would do our part and that it would be increasingly challenging to do so. But once more, hineni, here we are. Each of us can make the case to our neighbors. Each of us must make the case to our neighbors, especially here in Westchester, to our interfaith neighbors, about Israel's just war against Hamas. How Hamas uses Palestinian citizens as human shields, knowing that thousands will be killed and maimed as a result of so doing. We know that Hamas regularly confiscates food, water, and fuel meant for Gazan civilians so that their terrorists have what they need so they can attack and slaughter innocent Israelis again and again. We also know that our tradition commands us not to harden our hearts, and it's hard not to harden our hearts to the innocent Gazan victims of Hamas's genocidal ideology. That's the correct use of the word. As we make the case for Israel, and I know we all will with our interfaith friends and partners, we must also affirm our shared humanity, which includes increased humanitarian aid that the U.S. and Israel have pledged. Bishop Darren Moore, you remember him, when he preached on this bima, whoa, the whole place was vibrating. Formerly the pastor of our sister congregation, Greater Centennial Church in Mount Vernon, and he's now one of the leaders of his denomination. A year ago, Reverend Moore joined a trip I led of high-level black civil rights leaders to Israel and to the Palestinian territories. And our trip was unbelievably hard and yet ultimately affirming of the deep bonds that hold us together. And one of the very first people who called me after October 7th was my brother, Bishop Darren Moore. And there were many others. That's part of the holy work all members of WRT can do and will do, I know, and it will matter. We've been in meetings this week with Education Secretary Miguel Cardona and Homeland Secretary Mayorkas about how to protect our Jewish students on the college campuses as they face attacks not occasionally, but every single day. Places where our WRT students and our people students from all over are just hoping they can go to class and live and do what they came to do at college. The work is urgent for all of us, and all of us who are involved in supporting our alma maters, we also have a job to do. It's not on the Secretary of Education or the Homeland Secretary, it's on all of us. And if we have an involvement, we have to raise our voices, because this is just one of the new front lines. Pirkei Avot says, Shivim l'seva. 70 is a ripe old age, which could mean that a full life has already been lived when you reach 70. But dear members of Westchester Reformed Temple, I believe with every fiber of my being that the best is yet to come. Shabbat Shalom.